And so concludes my first ever watching of Lost beyond season 1. And while the journey to get to this point was not as satisfying as I would have liked it to be, because unfortunately, starting from towards the end of season 3 and then a little bit into season 4, starting in that area, it just became tough for me to keep track of what was going on, but that was because I didn't realize that we were doing a flash forward rather than a flash back. Although for this season, it was ridiculously easy for me to keep track of what's happening in what timeline. So thank you for that. Even though I'm sure you Lost fanatics are like, ay, newbie. Yeah. So, it became tough after that point for me to keep track of absolutely everything. Before that, I felt like I had a decent job doing it, even though I did get things wrong, but yeah. So that made it a tough experience, but the ending for that, much better than I was expecting, because my dad apparently had seen the vast majority of this show, and he's like, oh, they don't explain everything to you as to what's going on with the characters. That's literally what he said. But no! Every character, minus Desmond, has a fairly confirmed fate. Yeah, they don't talk about Rose and what's her husband, Norman, or something like that, but the beginning of the season established what was going on, and then fast forward towards the end of the season, they're still in that little hut that they made, content to lead their simple life, hoping that nothing befalls them. But then again, Rose was sick with terminal cancer, so she's just enjoying every day she's got. Who knows? Maybe when I'm that old, I'll have a different perspective. I don't know, but right. And even then, I checked Desmond on the Lost wiki, and it confirmed the throwaway lines that are easy to miss, but I picked up in the finale anyway, so yeah. And plus, they even had that little short on the Blu-ray there, The New Man in Charge, which definitely seems to be a continuation, although I don't know which timeline. I don't know if it's if the plane crashed or it didn't. I'm inclined to say that it's the one where it didn't, but at the same time, though, how are there still people that are aware of the Dharma situation if the thing didn't crash? So that's the argument to that, but Walt even gets a quick cameo in there, so that's nice. Right. I'm satisfied with this ending. I just don't like the journey that it took to get there, but hopefully, like with Battlestar Galactica 2004 slash Reimaged, I can look back on this show years down the line and get a much better rundown the second time, because the second time I won't have to worry about finding something that I'm not supposed to on the Lost wiki. I will be completely willing to do that. Like, really, the only thing that I could think of that I was left truly unsatisfied with was explaining how exactly Jack's father, Christian, died. Because I'm like, where's the bit where it says that? Well, turns out I just missed a throwaway line within season 1 that said he was found in the back of an alley with a blood alcohol content of... There you go. He died because he drank too much. Nothing else to it. A very ordinary death. That's why there was no sub-mystery or any residuals left after what he did with Sawyer or Michelle Rodriguez's character, because he died a perfectly ordinary death. That was just the island slash Man in Black manifesting itself, trying to make me think that there was more to Jack's father. Not really. Although the bits that they had with him, it's a powerful storyline. Yes, it's told out of order, but that strengthens it. And even then, in season 1, there's bits where Christian says, I freely admit I know I did him wrong, but I'm a coward. I just can't do it. Yeah. So, I was overthinking it. I already had the answer. Thank you, show. It's just a bummer that I didn't realize that. That being said, though, the very last bit that we had with him, great way to end the character and let you know that while he's a dick, he's not really a bad person, but come on, everybody in this show is meant to have problems. Even Claire has problems, both before and then after she gets to the island, though I was really surprised at how they brought her back and, had the bit where she's Jack's half-sister. It mattered in both the main timeline and then if the plane didn't, and it worked just great. Oh yeah, it's a bit of a bummer not to get a firm resolution on her character there, but the implication is that between when Kate goes to find Jack and at the concert and tells him, yeah, it's your time to move on, it seems like subtly there seems to have been a different version of the timeline where the plane didn't crash for just about everyone else, because when Claire was in that church at the end, I don't recall seeing that she was pregnant. Oh wait, no, she wouldn't have been because she gave birth right at the concert. Dingus! Right. But she's not pregnant, which means that she had the baby. But let's just assume that she hadn't had the baby, not pregnant at the end. It's not just because she's looking her best or anything like that. That would imply that there was a timeline where she had the baby and managed to live things out. So I'd like to think that all of these characters managed to go and live out their lives in this alternate timeline, except Jack and Hurley. That seems to be maybe Desmond too, but then again, though, in the main timeline, he's with Penny, so he got everything he wanted. So that would explain why it seems like he remembers things. It doesn't explain why Hurley remembers things, but okay, yeah. A timeline where everyone got to live out their lives normally, and somehow they all found the people that they were supposed to. It seems like Kate didn't end up with any one, but she managed to get past all the criminal activity bits and just managed to get something ordinary. Claire, I kind of doubt that she ended up with Charlie in this timeline, even though there is an attraction between them, but not enough, even if they remember, to restart it all, in my mind, but enough to convince them to realize there's stuff for us to do. Charlie's not going to kill himself by overdosing, and Claire's going to be fine in the end somehow. Bringing back Boone and Shannon, that was a really nice touch in that other timeline. Yeah, it's a glorified cameo, but I remember reading a couple of things about Boone because I was pretty confident that he would never come back. Turns out I was wrong, but I somehow missed that he did in this season, thank God. So, I'd heard where he said that he hadn't had the greatest relations with producers, but that he had come to regret his actions, so him showing up there, and it turns out he was in a scheme with Hurley to try and set up Sayid and Shannon again. That was great. That was great. That just fixes everything. And yeah, Shannon, she didn't really do that much, but it's a trick to set her up with the person that she loves, and yeah, she's still a bit of the selfish bitch in this timeline without a doubt, but apparently not racist. Progress. And then giving Miles and Daniel their own storylines, where Daniel's the Mr. Whitmore in this timeline, and Miles helping out other people without knowing any supernatural things, just doing his own bit. Great service to the character, because I bet on the rewatch I'm actually going to like this character a lot more after his introduction, which, by the way, is totally understandable because he knows that they're there for a contract. One of his friends gets killed, and then someone else that he works with starts experiencing having problems and then dies just a few days into it, because I'm pretty sure season 4 only takes place within a couple of weeks there, maybe a bit longer, but yeah. There's a bit to the character there. I just didn't really notice all of that. And having him be the son of that Asian doctor who's narrating everything, that's a nice twist that I bet in hindsight I'm going to enjoy more. Probably only that much more, but it's nice. And finally showing the origins of Richard and a bit of Charles Wallace. Listen, it's not everything, but I was fine with what we got. And then Richard losing the immortality, staying alive at the end, that was a little surprising, but he made it clear he's a good guy. He's done a lot of bad things. He's trying to help make it right in the end. Plus, even if there's a part of him that still believes in the island mythology, because it seems like there was, he has faith that it's in good hands now, even though I do think that he wants to stay off the island, because he stays off the island, he can die. That's what he wants. We've seen this over and over again, where everybody says in media, or even real life, they want to live forever, but it's, you want to live forever with everyone and everything you care about. If you don't have that, like that guy in the movie In Time with Justin Timberlake, eventually there comes a point where he's like, I'm done with this. Yeah. Hopefully I can kind of feel that way when it's my time. Talking about other characters, having a couple cameos with Michelle Rodriguez, that was nice. Yeah, nothing much amounted to the character, but as they say in the extras for season 2, everyone, including Michelle, knew that she was only going to be there for like a season and change. And she wouldn't have agreed to come back if she didn't want to. Well, she's not the type of person that would generally, take a bribe or something like that, especially if it's just a cameo. She's like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? My character is alive. It was on the plane, after all. Why not? Yeah, they didn't do it with the black guy, but, unfortunately, that would have been a lot harder to follow through on. Right. Locke, well, most of the season it isn't Locke, because it's just the man in black possessing him, and doing all that stuff. They just say Locke because that's a lot easier to say than Man in Black or the island spirit. That's... How can you convincingly say that to a camera? Just say Locke. Yes. I don't totally buy all of the alterations to his story in the timeline if the plane didn't crash, but he gets his happy ending, and the silent implication is that the Locke that is there in the church actually is the Locke that did go through the island. And he's like, hey, I'm good now. But it is kind of fitting that the man who had the most amount of faith in the island ended up being let down by it and then taken over. Although it does deprive all of the resolution to his feud with Ben, because, yeah, Ben, having him survive all that, I thought for sure they were going to kill him off. Just like they killed Charles Wallace there unceremoniously. Yeah, he's there to help out Hurley as the new Jacob, but I don't know, that irks me. That does irk me. And then the fates of all the characters who pass in the main timeline, well, Saeed, I'd say that's fitting of him. Yes, the moment is uncharacteristic, but he's like, I understand the bigger picture here, rah. Here, I'm not going to have all of you guys die on my watch. Yes, I had doubts. Yes, it took a lot of convincing. Yes, I didn't want to be a part of this. But I am a part of this. Alright, here we go. I think that's something he'd do. Plus, in the alternate timeline, he gets the love of his life back. Well, actually, not the love of his life. The love of his life in the island. Because, in the other timeline, he did reunite with her, then had her robbed, so there's a little less guilt of that. Okay, right. Okay. The pilot, well, he's there to be a pilot, to be a bit of a gag, but the thing is, like with the pilot in Mission Impossible 3, this guy can transition from gag to serious to being useful despite him being a slightly older age. I'm talking about the Lost pilot for that last bit. The guy in Mission Impossible 3 is the same age as Tom Cruise is. Or younger. Yeah. I shouldn't have included that, I think, but I'm gonna leave it in. Yeah. Who else to mention? Okay, so I think I'm really just down to the, main opposing forces. So, how they defeat the Men in Black, and then having Jacob be removed there. For Jacob's bit, it's kind of odd that they went that way, but it's to let you know that how to distinguish them from each other, because we've been led to believe that Jacob is the force behind everything, and he is, but he's not the only one, that other one being Man in Black. And that dynamic between them, I love how that episode resulted in where I don't think either of them was truly a good person. Yes, Jacob's exit from the show in practical terms was bad, but then they bring Mark Pellegrino back for a couple more scenes, and you get the attitude that he isn't actually that bothered by what happened to him. He probably just kept doing what he had been doing based on a lie, or because he didn't see really any other alternative. He ended up realizing that these people are probably going to find a solution that will help out everyone except for Man in Black. And that was enough for him. And Man in Black, well, he wanted two things. He wanted to be mortal, and then he wanted to get off the island. Well, he got the first one, he just didn't succeed at the second one, technically, but if you're mortal, that means that part of you does want to die, so... Yeah. So, it's odd that I'm saying this, but I'd say that that's about the best that producers could have done for these two. And I do feel odd saying that, but... Yeah. Okay, then oh yeah, Hurley, I don't totally remember why Jack passed the power along to him, but given what he was doing in the Ultimate Timeline, how he and Desmond were the matchmakers, and how Desmond, has the ability to get back to Penny, whereas Hurley, he doesn't really have that much out there, though... Who knows? Maybe he can still get into contact? It's alright. Right. And then the final four, which are the romantic couples. Well, I'm glad that they brought back Juliet, because ending her the way that they did at the end of Season 5, it would have been okay, but how she was able to pass it along to Sawyer... It worked, even though Sawyer doesn't, in the main timeline, ever figure out what she means, but then in the alternate timeline, upon them meeting each other, he remembers everything and he goes, "It's me." Oh my god. You know? It works out for his character eventually, then that moment where that he has with Kate on that deck, and he's just like, some of us are just meant to be alone. He knows that he's moved on past the lingering feelings that he had for Kate in seasons 4 and 5. He knows his true love was Juliet, who was taken from him, and he's like, yeah, this is what I deserve, to be left alone, to atone for all I've done in the past. He moved on from Kate. And both of the actors, and a couple things that I've read, fleeting things that I've read, they indicated that they didn't quite believe the idea of them being together when they started, but then once they finished, they're like, we believe it. Thought that was great. And Sawyer getting off the island, and Jack not, it's a nice bit about how the hero goes down to save his friends, and the person who starts off as the antithesis of everything he knows turns out to be not so bad after all, but had a lot going bad for him and still went through a lot, but now has a chance to do something good. Who knows what he's going to do? He'll probably just be a guy, not amount to the hugest amount of things, but isn't that true for most of us? We don't really mean much to anyone outside of our social circle, and even then, the majority of people in there, we're going to end up leaving, either because we change jobs, move out of an area, graduate from high school. Yeah, it was tough for me to say goodbye to a lot of those people when I finished high school, because I knew I'm probably not going to see a lot of you guys again. Yep. Barely ever saw any of them after graduation day, and the few that I did see again, last time that happened was a year after my brother finished high school. So yeah, that sucks. Kate's getting off the island. I wish that they had explained a little bit more what happened afterward, because she still got all that legal trouble, but maybe the silent implication is that after she got back there... Oh wait, no, because she had already confronted the legal issues in season 4. Yes, there were the people trying to get her child, but I mean, get Aaron, but I'd be willing to wager that that was Ben. Alright? I'd be willing to wager that Claire came forward in the main timeline and defended her, and it would have been sketchy for a long while, but enough people were arguing on her behalf. Yeah. She would have overcome that eventually. Probably not going to get the greatest amount of career paths, but Kate doesn't want that. Plus, she's demonstrated herself to be someone who's willing to do a lot of stuff anyway to get by. So I kind of wish that we'd had that little sign-off to her, but logic tells me that eventually she's going to be okay. And then Jack, well, that explains the shot that I had seen, because I knew that the last shot of the show was Jack being where he had been at the start of it, but I didn't have any context. He sacrificed himself to save all of his friends that was still left. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about Jen and Son! Oh my god, what an idiot. Well, you know, after trying to get back to each other for about half the show, they finally did. And when it's the opposite of what happened before, Jin has a chance to get away, but Sun doesn't. He chooses to stay with her, showing that despite the fact that both of them were going to break up with each other after they landed in the original timeline, that he wants to be with her and that he loves her for real. And then the alternate timeline showed that even though they weren't in love with each other then, they, well, or as in love as the original timeline was showing. They did manage to fall in love. A little bit of that was because of the memories coming back, but he wouldn't have helped her out that much if part of him didn't care. So, right. Yeah, I loved with what they did with most of these characters here. So, now that I'm on the other side, it's a good show. I don't like it as much as the crowd does, but I don't like Seinfeld as much as the crowd does. You're gonna hate me for this. I prefer Friends over it. The main reason for that is because Friends has a more obvious continuity to it, whereas Seinfeld, they take it a little bit more episodically. Oh yes, there's recurring story arcs. I know that there is, and they do expand the main cast eventually in Seinfeld, okay? But it's just... I guess I just prefer that style of sitcom a little bit better. Sorry. Right. I'm definitely not going to get rid of that because, as I said in my last season's review, if I was willing to buy Shameless again, a show that I had a much better read on, but then kept regretting that I got rid of it down the line, I know it's going to happen with this one, because this show has a lot going for it, but you have to either get it or know somebody that does get it. I didn't have the second one, and it just didn't happen this time, but I got quite a lot of it. So yeah. I'm definitely not a disliker of the show, I just wished I liked it more, but when I rewatch it again, knowing a lot of these things, it's going to be a lot better. That's what happened when I watched 2004 Battlestar Galactica last year. Much better experience. Loved almost every minute of it. Was able to track every character, wasn't confusing at all. Yeah. Thank God my tenacity held to just keep up with this show, because had every season been the same length as the first few, that would have definitely gotten to me, but the fact that the last 3 seasons combined were about the length of 2 of those seasons, that made me realize I think I should be able to just power through this. Thankfully I was. So even though there's no way they'll ever see this, thank you Jameson Montgomery, John Scott, and Chase Roberson? Yeah. Damn, it's been a long time since I thought of these people. I'm forgetting the names of people that I knew in high school. I remember almost all of my teachers. But shows you that the years are starting to add up, in a sense. Thank you to all you guys for helping me get into this show. Yeah, it took me forever to get down to actually watching it, but real glad I did. Alright, another 10-year plus TV show down. Time to move on to another one. And I'll definitely be able to talk about it a lot better than I did with this one. Bye, guys.